There have been thousands of pro tennis players over tennis's history, yet only a small portion of them have been able to create history very few can achieve. But despite the greatness these players have shown, a hidden question emerges. What happened to the hundreds of athletes that were forgotten? Because for some, it's hard to believe that years of hard work can go unnoticed, but for others, that's a very real reality. You see, in tennis, if you're not in the top 1% of players, you're earning basically nothing. And as a side note, this is a huge part of why players don't stick around for as long as they should. But now you may ask, why does all of this even matter? Because surely if you have the talent and you put in the hard work, there's no chance you get left behind. And to that, I say you're wrong. Because what if, out of the thousands of pro ex-players there are, we look at 4 of the sport's lost legends that may not be remembered if videos like this aren't being made. Our first forgotten legend can be seen as somewhat of a wonder kid, because he won his first Grand Slam at the age of 17. Imagine what you were doing at 17 years old. It probably wasn't winning millions of dollars playing at Grand Slams. If you still aren't sure who I'm talking about, it's Michael Chang. That first major Grand Slam win is what truly sent shockwaves around the tennis world, because he was, and he still is, the youngest player to ever win a Grand Slam. That's younger than Alcaraz, Sinner, Federer, Nadal and Djokovic. And for those of you who remember his most significant game, it was when he managed to pull off a legendary underhand serve against Lendl. But to really put this into perspective, imagine this: just 3 months after you turn 17 years old, you walk out onto a roaring French crowd. You take a moment to absorb the centre court atmosphere, which is known for being incredibly ruthless to unknown players. And of course, we're talking about the French Open. But then your heartbeat slows, all the noise around you begins to fade away, and now you're left with the court, your opponent and yourself. Then you remember where you came from, a small state in the USA with your 2 immigrant parents moving from Taiwan all the way to the US. And then you remember how you dropped out of the 10th grade to pursue pro tennis, and you also remember how you sacrificed so many childhood memories to be in the position you're at right now. And then you remember how you started to win in a Grand Slam final, one of the biggest matches of your entire life and career. You took the first set 6-1, and now you're feeling it. The crowd is roaring and you believe there's still a chance, but all of a sudden things start to slip away. You lose the second set 3-6, but you still have faith. But the third set was still out of reach, losing 4-6. Now everyone's thinking, even your parents back in the US, if he doesn't win this next set of the game, all that hard work he put in for his entire life may be shattered in a split second. But then something somewhere changes, because your shots begin to land in the right places, your serves are more consistent, and you start to get in the mind of your opponent. You take that set 6-4, and now it's all equal, and truly it's anyone's game. At this moment, it's not about who's physically stronger or who's quote unquote better at tennis, but it's about who can stay mentally sharp for the biggest set of their entire career. And in the end, after a grueling 4-hour match of constant ups and downs, the young boy from the USA, Michael Chang, wins his first Grand Slam final at the age of 17. But now, if we go back to the present day, Michael reached 4 Grand Slam finals and earned huge respect on the tour. Yet despite all of this, he was still overshadowed by American legends like Sampras and Agassi. He then also retired quietly and didn't stay in the media spotlight for a long time compared to many other players. One of the important factors to his forgottenness is that his prime came well before the internet era, so younger fans rarely see highlights of him. Remember how I was talking about money earlier being a huge impact on players? Here's the harsh truth. Tennis is one of the most expensive sports to pursue professionally. Unless you're a part of the tiny top tier, you're unlikely to see any money in the green. If you think about it, you're paying for flights, hotels, coaching fees, physios, stringing costs, tournament entries. All of that and increasing costs every year. Now imagine doing that week after week across the globe. With no guaranteed income, you could even be ranked inside the top 300 and still walk away with tournaments having made nothing, or worse, having lost money. The prize money drop off in tennis is brutal. At Grand Slams, sure, there's numbers that are huge, but most players don't even get to those rounds. And in lower level events, like Challengers or Futures, the total prize pool sometimes doesn't even cover a player's travel costs. So why does this matter? Because it means talent alone isn't enough. You could have the best strokes, the mindset, even the result, but if you don't have the funding, the sponsors, or wealthy backing, your career might end up before you even get anywhere. And this is exactly why so many promised players are vanishing early. It's not just about injuries or burnout, but it's because of the financial grind. They've put in the same amount of work and the same amount of hours, sacrificed just as much as top players, but tennis doesn't give everyone a fair shot to stick around. That's why when we talk about forgotten players, we're not just talking about memories, but we're talking about how the system of tennis guarantees most of them don't even stay around for as long as they need to. But before we move on, let's be clear, no ex-pro tennis player is ever truly forgotten. It's just a matter of how many people still remember them, because the work and discipline it takes to get anywhere close to their level is nearly impossible. But now let's look at another one of these lost players who had their moment and then disappeared from the conversation. Now, if Michael Chang showed us how a teenager can shock the whole sport, our next player shows us how a young player can rise so quickly that people start wondering if he's about to change the direction of men's tennis altogether. Chung grew up in South Korea, where his parents brought him into tennis to help with his eyesight, and somehow that small decision turned into a career that looked like it was heading straight to the top. He had this calm composure on the court, the kind where you feel like he knows something that you just don't, and it came together during the 2018 Australian Open. This is arguably one of the most notable matches of all time, because Chung's run didn't feel normal. It felt like something new was forming right in front of us. He beat Daniil Medvedev, then Alexander Zverev, both future top players, and still top players to this day. And then he did the unthinkable. He took down Novak Djokovic in straight sets. Have you ever heard many people say that? Probably not, because many people don't even do that. He was hitting the cleanest backhands that kept landing deeper and deeper until Djokovic couldn't find a way out. And for a moment, it felt like Asia had finally brought another male star who could sit inside of the top 10 and maybe even higher. But then the same thing that haunts so many players hit him harder than anyone expected. His feet couldn't handle the strain of the sudden rise, and the injuries piled up so fast that by the end of the season, he was pulling out of events more often than he was even playing in them. He tried to have comebacks, he tried to build up his fitness again, and he tried resetting everything, but his body just kept shutting down. And that's how a player who reached the Australian Open semi-final at just 21 years old slowly faded from the tour level tennis before fans even realised the potential that he had. Now, we don't have someone who just changed tennis, but he changed the whole energy of the court when he stepped on it. Tsonga grew up in France in a family that encouraged sport from an extremely young age, and you could see that athletic power in everything that he did, from the way he covered the net to the way he struck his forehand. But the moment that stamped his name onto the global stage came in 2008, because that Australian Open run felt unreal. Tsonga wasn't supposed to beat world-class players back to back, and then somehow he dismantled Rafael Nadal in the semi-final with winners flying from both swings. Tsonga did have the level to beat anyone. He had wins over Federer, Nadal and Djokovic, but his body just couldn't stay with him. He had knee problems, arm issues and back issues. Each one chipped away at the kind of explosive movement his game relied on, and slowly that electric presence ended up fading. Not because he lost his talent, but because the physical strain never let him stay on top long enough to convert those moments into something bigger. And now we've got someone who carried the entire weight of a nation every time he stepped on court. He grew up in Japan, where he trained aggressively from a young age, and eventually moved to the United States to join the IMG Academy, living away from home as a teenager so he could build a career that seemed almost impossible for anyone in his country. His defining moment came in 2014 during the US Open. He beat Raonic in 5 sets and then Wawrinka in another 5. Then he faced Novak Djokovic in the semi-final, where he played with his steady, calm aggression that Djokovic just couldn't match. Nishikori represented a sporting and cultural milestone for Japan in tennis, and it proved that anyone from any nation who doesn't have a deep history in tennis success can stand among the very best. But yet again, greatness does come with a cost, and Nishikori paid that with constant injuries, because his body just stopped letting him show it. So when we talk about forgotten players, the truth is they're not forgotten at all. Their stories still matter, and their matches are still inspiring people and their careers till today. And it just shows how hard it is to exist in a sport where only a fraction ever reached the top. I appreciate all of you watching. It would mean so much if you liked and subscribed, and I'll see you guys in the next video.